Ever feel like you want to dive deep into a topic, like really get it,
Yeah.
but sorting through all the info out there can feel kind of impossible?
Right. It's a lot.
Well, that's what we're tackling here on the Deep Dive. We take a super focused look at some sources and pull out the core knowledge, the good stuff, the surprising stuff, but without drowning in a sea of detail.
Exactly. Efficiency is key.
Totally. And today we're diving into something super fascinating. Nobel Prize winners in literature, specifically those who mainly wrote in English.
And this deep dive is tailor-made for you, especially given your interest in, well, English literature. We're using Nobel Prize winners.pdf by Dr. Jasvant Rathod as our jumping off point.
Perfect.
His work is really clear. It lays out these big deal authors and what they did. And it keeps in mind, the viewpoint of someone, studying literature.
Right, like a student in India.
Yeah, exactly, like a grad student. So it's perfect for our approach.
Awesome. So we're not just going to name drop authors and book titles.
No way.
We're going to unearth the ideas behind them, the connections, the big aha moments that made these writers so influential. It's about getting that deeper, lasting understanding.
Absolutely. Making those connections.
All right, so where do we even begin with these English language Nobel winners? Like, who are some of those early voices?
Well, a good place to start, I think, is with Rudyard Kipling. He won the prize in 1907.
Mm-hmm.
And what's really interesting about him is that, he was born in India.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and Dr. Rathod, he points out that Kipling's early life there, it really shaped his writing, a lot of it.
Yeah, when you think about the Jungle Book, it's so vivid, right? Like, you can feel India in it, even though it's a fantasy about, Mowgli and Baloo and Bagheera.
Totally.
It's about navigating different worlds, finding your place when things are complex. And then there's Kim, right? You're thrown into this world of spies and intrigue during, British rule in India. It's a look at someone straddling two cultures. And even his Just So stories, those whimsical explanations for how animals got their features, they kind of subtly hint at a world shaped by forces, including, the British Empire.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if you look at the bigger picture, Kipling's work really grapples with, the whole thing with the British Empire in India.
Yeah.
There's that sense of exotic adventure, of course, but underneath it, it's about belonging or not belonging in that time and place.
Right.
It makes you think, how does colonialism shape not just people's lives, but the stories they tell?
That's a really good point. And it takes us to William Butler Yeats. He won in 1923. Another writer tied to his homeland, but this time it's Ireland and their fight for independence.
And what's fascinating about Yeats is how he blends Irish mythology and folklore with real historical and political stuff. Like, take his poem, Easter 1916.
Powerful poem.
It's a direct response to the Easter Rising against British rule. He's not just telling a story. He's honoring the bravery of the people who fought.
It's incredibly moving, and it shows how poetry can be this immediate, powerful reaction to political upheaval. But Yeats goes beyond politics, too, right? In works like The Tower and The Winding Stair, it's more personal, but still rooted in that Irish landscape, those old stories.
Exactly. He explores universal themes, love, aging, the search for meaning, but he does it through a very Irish lens. The link he makes between the past and the present is so strong in his poetry. It makes you think about how time shapes us, as individuals and as nations.
So we've seen these early Nobel winners dealing with empire, national identity.
Yeah.
Now let's shift to a time where we see more direct social commentary in literature.
Okay.
And George Bernard Shaw, the 1925 winner, he's like the poster child for that.
Yeah.
He was amazing at using humor, like really sharp wit, to make some serious points about society.
Yeah.
I mean, Pygmalion, most people know it as My Fair Lady, right? But it's so much more than a charming story about a professor changing a flower girl. It's about how social class shapes your whole life, how people see you. And then there's St. Joan, which looks at power, religion, in someone standing up against the rules. Shaw wasn't afraid to challenge things.
No, he wasn't.
Yeah.
And what's really interesting about him is how much he focused on the roles of women in society, and he questioned these deep power structures. He used plays to make people think, to challenge their ideas about fairness and individuality.
From Shaw's wit, we go to the more, blunt satire of Sinclair Lewis, the American winner in 1930. He really showed American life as it was, and it wasn't always pretty.
Not always.
His novel Main Street, it's like he's taking apart that narrow-minded thinking in small-town America, that fear of anything different. And Babbitt, that's a classic portrait of a businessman obsessed with money and fitting in to the point where he loses himself.
Yeah, totally. Lewis goes after that blind faith in the American dream, the idea that wealth equals happiness. He explores that tension between what we want and what society expects. Makes you wonder if those things are still relevant today.
It does.
For sure. And after Lewis, we have John Galsworthy. He won in 1932 for the Forsyte Saga. It's this huge, multi-generational story about an English family, like a deep dive into their lives.
The Forsyte Saga, it feels like a snapshot of English society going through big changes. Their relationships, their money troubles, their loves and losses. It's all happening as the world around them shifts.
Yeah. And what Galsworthy does really well is he looks at the link between wealth and family, how they hold people together and tear them apart. He's interested in that clash between old traditions and new ways of thinking.
So we've looked at these big social pictures, but now let's turn to writers who explored the more, I guess you could say, personal, often darker sides of being human.
Okay.
Eugene O'Neill, the 1936 winner, he's a perfect example. His plays, they feel so personal, dealing with some heavy stuff.
Yeah.
Like Long Day's Journey into Night, it's so raw and honest, it's almost hard to watch. Knowing it's based on his own family's struggles with addiction and secrets makes it even more powerful. And even in The Iceman Cometh, with all those broken characters, there's this search for meaning, even if it's just an illusion.
Yeah. O'Neill had this way of looking at the hard parts of life. Sadness, family problems that search for meaning. His plays, even though they're tough emotionally, they make you think about what it means to be human.
Then we have Pearl S. Buck, the 1938 winner, for The Good Earth. This feels like a big shift, taking us away from the West and into rural China.
And what's really amazing about Buck is how she portrays ordinary Chinese people with so much empathy and detail. The Good Earth tells the story of a farmer and his wife, their hard work, their struggles, and how they eventually become successful.
It's like a window into a whole different culture. Buck highlights values like hard work and resilience, but she also subtly points out those cultural differences, the specific challenges people in rural China faced back then.
Now we come to two giants of 20th century poetry, both wrestling with these big intellectual and spiritual questions. T.S. Eliot, who won in 1948, and William Faulkner the following year.
Eliot's The Wasteland, it still feels so relevant today.
Doesn't it?
It's fragmented, full of illusions, and it captures that disillusionment after World War I. It's a tough read, but it's powerful in how it shows a broken world, a search for meaning in the wreckage.
Yeah.
And then for quartets, that feels like an even deeper dive into ideas about time, memory, and finding peace.
What's so interesting about Eliot is that he blends all these different traditions and ideas in his poetry. He's talking to history, mythology, religion, to explore loss, spirituality, how the past hangs over us. His work really makes you want to reread it. Think about it.
And then we have Faulkner, so rooted in the American South. His novels often explore the legacy of slavery and its impact across generations.
Absolutely. The Sound of the Fury, that's a masterpiece. It's experimental, giving you these fractured views of a family falling apart from different perspectives.
Yeah.
And then, As I Lay Dying, multiple narrators, stream of consciousness, it really pulls you into the minds and emotions of a Southern family.
Faulkner doesn't shy away from the tough stuff. History, family struggles. He makes us face the past and how it shapes the present.
In 1950, the Nobel Prize went to someone whose main contribution wasn't fiction, but ideas and public thought. Bertrand Russell, the philosopher.
Russell was so clear and sharp. A history of Western philosophy takes these complex ideas and makes them accessible. And Why I Am Not a Christian, that shows his commitment to reason, questioning beliefs.
He really championed clear thinking, peace, social justice. He believed in reason as the answer to humanity's problems.
Moving into the 1950s, we see two very different but iconic figures, Winston Churchill in 53 and Ernest Hemingway in 54.
Churchill, we know him as a leader, but his writings, especially the Second World War, are huge achievements. A first-hand look at a turning point in history shaped by his perspective.
You feel his determination, his command of language. These books highlight leadership, fighting for freedom, the resilience of people in tough times.
And then Hemingway, with his incredibly concise, powerful writing.
Yeah.
Novels like The Old Man and the Sea. It's a simple story of a fisherman fighting a huge fish, but so deeply moving.
Oh,
Yeah, Farewell to Arms. A love story during war. Classic Hemingway.
He would convey so much emotion, explore complex themes using so few words, stripped everything down to the bare essentials: bravery, loss, the core of what it means to be human.
In 1962, the prize went to John Steinbeck, another American writer focused on ordinary people's struggles.
The Grapes of Wrath, that's such a powerful look at families during the Depression, their resilience, searching for hope in really tough times. And Of Mice and Men, this heartbreaking story of friendship and shattered dreams.
Steinbeck always put a spotlight on those on the margins, the working class. He showed us economic injustice, the importance of connection, and how the American dream is out of reach for so many.
Then we have Samuel Beckett, the 1969 winner. His work takes us to a more existential, often darkly funny place.
Yeah.
His plays, like Waiting for Godot, they're so unique, stark, minimalist, with characters kind of stuck, dealing with the absurdity of life. But even in that bleakness, there's this sense of carrying on, not giving up, even when things seem meaningless.
Waiting for Godot, it can be frustrating, but it makes you think. It challenges you to think about why we keep going, even when there are no clear answers.
Absolutely.
Now, as we move into the later 20th century and the early 21st, we see the Nobel Prize recognizing writers from more and more diverse backgrounds. It really enriches the whole landscape of English literature.
Definitely.
Patrick White, the Australian winner in 1973, he brought that distinct Australian voice to the world stage. Voss, with its story of an explorer in the outback and his inner journey, that's a great example.
White often explored the connection between people and nature, searching for meaning and relationships in isolated places.
And then Saul Bellow, the 1976 winner, he focused on these intellectual characters dealing with modern life. Like in Herzog, with the protagonist always thinking, writing letters, it shows that struggle between thoughts and feelings in today's world.
Bella's novels, they're full of this intellectual energy, exploring the challenges and contradictions people face in a changing society.
Exactly. And then William Golding, who won in 1983, probably most famous for Lord of the Flies.
Oh, that's a chilling story.
It is a group of boys on an island descending into savagery. It's a reminder of how fragile civilization is, how close we are to cruelty.
Lord of the Flies is a powerful, unsettling look at human nature. It makes you question if we're inherently good and what happens when society's rules disappear.
And then in the 1980s and 90s, you see a lot more Nobel laureates writing from post-colonial perspectives, giving us these crucial insights into the legacies of empire and the complexity of identity in a post-colonial world. Wole Soyinka, the 1986 winner from Nigeria, he's a huge figure in African literature. His play Death and the King's Horseman, it engages with Yoruba culture, the tension between tradition and modernity, and how colonialism impacts both personal and societal duties.
Soyinka's work is so rich, full of cultural references and these tough ethical dilemmas. It shows the clash between different ways of seeing the world.
Then there's Nadine Gordimer, the 1991 winner from South Africa. She used her fiction to confront the horrors of apartheid. July's People, it imagines a future South Africa and explores race, power, and the moral choices people have to make in a divided society.
Gordimer didn't hold back. She looked at social injustice and how relationships are affected by oppression.
Derek Walcott, the 1992 winner from the Caribbean. He had this incredible poetic voice that celebrated his culture and history. Omeros, his epic poem, blends Greek myths with Caribbean life. It's a testament to his use of language.
It's like a tapestry of language and images, exploring identity, the post-colonial experience, and how stories shape us.
And then Toni Morrison, the 1993 winner, a monumental figure in American literature. Her work digs deep into the African-American experience. Novels like Beloved, dealing with the trauma of slavery, and Song of Solomon, about a man tracing his family's past.
Morrison's writing is lyrical and unflinching. She examines trauma, history, and the search for self and belonging in the African-American community.
Seamus Heaney, the 1995 winner. His poetry is so connected to the land and history of Ireland. Collections like Death of a Naturalist really make you feel that sense of place, the weight of memory, using nature to understand human experience in Ireland's past.
You can feel the earth, the traditions in his poetry, all through his precise, beautiful language.
V.S. Naipaul, the 2001 winner, he often explored post-colonial identity, that feeling of displacement.
Yeah.
A House for Mr. Biswas, it's a story of a man in Trinidad trying to find his place to belong. It really captures those themes of rootlessness and searching for who you are in a world shaped by colonialism.
And more recently, the Nobel Prize has continued recognizing this huge range of voices and styles in English literature.
It has. Harold Pinter, the 2005 winner, he changed theater with his spare dialogue, creating tension and power dynamics like in The Birthday Party. He could create so much unease with so few words.
It's amazing.
Doris Lessing, she won in 2007. She had such a long career tackling so many themes: women's experiences, politics, colonial struggles. Her books, The Golden Notebook, The Grass is Singing, they're so powerful.
Alice Munro, the 2013 winner, she was a master of the short story. She captured those small but deep moments in everyday life, especially in small towns, like in Dear Life and Runaway. Her focus on time, memory, the complexity of relationships, it's incredible.
And Kazuo Ishiguro, the 2017 winner. He's known for his elegant writing and exploring memory, regret, what it means to be human. He often uses unreliable narrators and thought-provoking situations like in The Remains of the Day and Never Let Me Go.
Louise Gluck, the 2020 winner, a poet who uses nature and myths to explore deep emotions. Her collection, The Wild Iris, is a great example. Her poems deal with loss, change, finding meaning in hard times. They're direct and moving.
And lastly, Abdulrazak Gurnah, the 2021 winner. He gives us these important perspectives on colonialism, migration, and rebuilding your identity, especially in East Africa. His novels, like Paradise and By the Sea, shine a light on these often forgotten histories.
Wow, what a journey through English literature, as seen through the Nobel Prize. From early ideas about empire and national identity to more recent explorations of personal identity, social justice, and the inner lives of people, these writers are so diverse in their themes, styles, and perspectives.
They are, and I think even this overview, it gives you a really good starting point to understand these incredible writers. You can already see those connections across time, find authors or themes that speak to you. I hope this deep dive has given you some of those aha moments.
It really has. It makes you think about how powerful language and storytelling are. They show us the complexity of being human across different cultures and times. And seeing all these diverse voices, it makes you wonder, what does this say about what English literature even means today? How global it's become? It's something to think about. Maybe it'll even lead you to your next favorite book.
That would be great.
It would.